excited to be able to join together as women, as the Women of ACG LA. We thought that a health and wellness panel was really timely considering our circumstances. We're in the midst of this global pandemic. We're worried for ourselves and our loved ones about, staying healthy in this environment. And we're also quarantined to our homes, much more isolated, out of our routines. I have not had a manicure in a long time or gone to Pilates. So we're just in this very strange environment. So we thought health and wellness is so top of mind. This would be a great panel topic. And so I'm so pleased to have three amazing women who are in this space and just in all different areas of this space. So I'll briefly introduce our very esteemed panel today, and then I'll let them tell their stories and we'll get right into it. So I'd like to introduce Sandy Gleysteen. She is currently the executive producer of content programming and special events for WHAM, which is the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. This is a nonprofit founded by Maria Shriver. And WHAM really addresses the disproportionate impact that Alzheimer's has on women today. I'd also like to introduce Mara Gordon. Mara is a cannabis advocate, entrepreneur, and researcher, and she is the founder of Aunt Zelda's, which is a company that develops cannabis-based plant medicines. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Virginia Llewellyn. She is the general counsel of Goop, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle brand. I'm sure you've all heard of it. You can go there and buy vagina-scented candles. I actually just recently used the site to find kid-friendly restaurants that are open in Santa Barbara. So it's a tremendous resource. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm so excited to have you. Without me reading your bios, I thought we'd go around and just take some time for each of you to tell your story about who you are and how you got to where you are. So Sandy, why don't we start with you?
Great. Well, first of all, Teresa, thank you. And thank you, ACGLA, for putting together this important panel, especially right now. And I really appreciate everybody who's tuning in. So thank you all for being here. It's really great. As Teresa said, I'm Sandy Gleysteen. I'm a journalist by profession. With over 30 years of experience at NBC News and CBS News in the network newsrooms. And today I'm applying those journalistic skills to the world of women, and especially women's health as it relates to their brain health. As Teresa mentioned, I'm at the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, which my very dear friend and former colleague at NBC News, Maria Shriver, started. And so that is where we are putting our efforts right now. So, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine and he said, "What are you doing on this panel?" I said, "I don't know. They asked me to tell about how did I end up here?" And he looked at me. He's a really funny guy and he makes, comedy movies. And he said to me, "How did you end up where you are?" "Probably through a series of really bad decisions." And I had to laugh because I went, well, some of them might have been not so good, but it is decisions that bring us to where we are and whichever part of the path we're on in the journey. And I was thinking about the nature of decisions and how they've applied to my life. And so I was thinking that some of them have been kind of prescriptive decisions. I grew up in a family that believed in public service. My grandparents were missionaries in China. My father, all his brothers grew up there. They all went into the foreign service. They believed in government service. I came along just during Watergate, and for me, my public service was in journalism because I do believe facts matter, and I think there is such a thing as the truth. So I very much have loved my career as a journalist, but I feel like it got rooted early in life. Some of my decisions were more serendipitous. I walked down the right hallway, a door opened, and there was the person offering me a job. But I also would like to say a lot of the things that led to my success as a producer at NBC News and CBS News was thanks to other women having the courage to take the networks to court early on and say, let us in the editorial power structure. So I stand on the shoulders of other women. And then some of my decisions were more impulsive, maybe not based on fact as much as reactive, but they're all part of the adventure. Anyway, here I am today unexpectedly concerned about women, especially women's brain health. 2 out of 3 cases of Alzheimer's belong to women. We do not know why that is. 2 out of 3 caregivers are women, and my guess is that most people do know why that is. We are a sex that takes care of other people, often at great cost to ourselves. So today, my job is to tell the story, amplify the story, improve the situation for women, their brain health. There's so much exciting stuff going on. It's not all a bummer story. And I really find it of tremendous value that I have the ability for me to use my skills in an arena that impacts so many millions of women and for whom there's so much hope. That's my story.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for sharing that. Mara, why don't you tell us a little bit too?
Well, I'd like to obviously echo Sandy and thank you and Michael and ACG Los Angeles for inviting me and including it and having this wonderful discussion today. It is timely. I am a process engineer by training. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that I'm pretty expert in recognizing patterns and processes and repeatability within data. You know, we have all seen that movie where the kid says, you know, I see dead people. And I say, I see patterns. You know, I see them everywhere. I look. And I had stopped working for a living, let's put it that way, back in early 2000s, about 2003, I think it was. And I didn't plan on going back to work at all. And then further health issues came along that required more medical intervention. And when I saw that the various things that were out there that were available for treatments, that were awful, I made the decision to go and seek out better solutions to help myself. And then in doing so, recognize that I could help other people. And the only way that this was going to be generalized is if I got involved and started looking for the patterns and the treatments and trying to find ways to treat various diseases utilizing different profiles of plant medicines. My focus has been primarily on cannabinoid-based medicines and research over the past decade, or almost decade. But it's by no means is it a panacea that I believe that, you know, it's the answer to everything. It's got so much potential that's not being realized because of the way that it's being treated, you know, and also obviously the reefer madness stuff that I had believed also. That's just not true. I mean, it's over a 10,000-year-old plant medicine that we're now in this point in age, we're finally learning about here in modern times. I came from a background of, you know, being of service also. I mean, I think that that's a recurring pattern. It's of, you know, the values that we get as a child. I remember, you know, walking neighborhoods for GOTV, you know, back during the elections. I remember going to housing projects as a young teenager, teaching older kids how to read and write. I mean, just the crazy things. So it's a natural thing that to see something that can be helpful to other people and have it be in my nature to want to say, how can I make this available to help more people? Instead of what's in it for me, it's can we help this for others? And so that's pretty much where I am at this point. You know, we got my husband and I together, we have 3 kids, we have 6 grandchildren, got a great dog. I live in Bodega Bay. I'm a happy person that leads my life with joy every single day of my life. And if it doesn't bring me joy, it doesn't get to be in my world. Yeah. And so thank you.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you. Virginia?
Well, happy to be here, as Sandy and Mara mentioned. I also have a wonderful dog who brings me a lot of happiness, and she happens to be right under my feet at the moment. So pending any barking. You know, I come to the wellness game, I guess, later in my journey, maybe than Sandy and Mara. I'm the general counsel at Goop, as Teresa mentioned, and I'm a longtime general counsel to emerging growth stage companies. And I guess my gateway to wellness as my career really started through the beauty industry. I was involved in the making of beauty products at a couple of different companies prior to Goop. And I started to really understand, as a lawyer who was also responsible for regulatory and compliance, that there were a lot of ingredients in those products, oftentimes, not always, but often, that I started to feel like, if I can't pronounce it, if I'm really having difficulty understanding what this ingredient is and what it brings to the table, it's probably not something I want to put on my skin. And our skin, as we all know, is the largest organ of the body. And so I really started thinking about wellness from that perspective and became really interested in clean beauty as a way to take better care of myself. And going on 2 years now, I was introduced to the team at Goop. They were searching for their first general counsel, and it has been a wild ride in the last couple of years, but I'm really proud of the work we've done. I know Goop oftentimes has a reputation of pushing boundaries, maybe sometimes a little farther than they should have been pushed, but I'm really proud of where we stand today in I think really riding that fine line between the distance that you can push to ask questions about maybe alternative methods of healing and things that people don't think are normal the first time they hear about it. But we're really proud of that. And it's been thrilling for me to be part of this industry, especially I think during these COVID times when we are all having to think about our own health and wellness and that of our family members and our friends in a way that we never have before. And so I think these conversations are coming to the forefront in a way that's so authentic and so necessary right now. And I can't imagine an industry that would be more exciting at this point.
Thanks, Virginia. Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point that, maybe that's the silver lining of this whole thing, is that we do come out of it healthier, that we do focus on our health more, and we just had time to reflect and really focus on it. So hopefully there's some good that comes out of this whole situation. Given that sort of leads right up to my next question, which is really, what does wellness mean to you now and versus prior to the lockdown? We've talked about how prior to the lockdown, self-care or wellness meant that you were going to Pilates regularly or getting your nails done or what have you. Now we're just in this, very different environment. So maybe we could go around and just each of you could answer that question, really what it means for you and how it's different today. So feel free to chime in, or we can go in the same order if that's easier.
I'll jump in. Let's keep it mixed up a little.
Okay.
Just for the heck of it. So how has it changed? So prior to COVID-19, I traveled almost full time. I mean, I came home to regroup, set up my next, project, whatever I was working on, and then I was gone just so much of the time all over the world. So first thing I want to talk about is my wardrobe. I have so many black blazers and black pairs of slacks and tank tops, and I have that whole uniform of the business traveling woman, where it's just like, don't look at what I'm wearing, I'm just wearing black. Well, I never really, or in the past, of course, but at this stage of life, I'd kind of gone downhill on my casual wardrobe. I didn't really have, I was working or I was a slob. There wasn't a whole lot of in between, and having to, kind of learn how to dress for this, plus the fact, I used to have conference calls all day long. There wasn't the need to see each other. Now every call is a face-to-face. So it's like, and I have got pretty crazy hair, and I'm out really remotely. Normally the woman that cuts my hair comes to my house and does it. And she hasn't been here. So, bobby pins, hair clips, things like that. You know, I went to put some mascara on yesterday just to see how it was going to be for today because it had been so long. It was completely dry. I found one that was in one of these like little boxes. I mean, so all of those things have been, you know, and I was like, okay, let's see how that worked. And then I'm cleaning up mascara all over because it's all wet. And so there's been a lot of like, you know, really sharing the humanity of what we're all going through. You know, like I don't cook. So like, how am I going to eat? That kind of thing, you know, the things that are going on that are different, but I'm a vegetarian. So it has to be healthy and good food, and accessing that living remotely has all been challenging. We did implement here where we every day in the afternoon from 3 to 4, we do stretching, yoga, meditation. People are able to do their, you know, some people want to go for a run during that time. It's just really a time to, you know, take care of yourself because we're not getting any exercise otherwise. We're not going to the office and having that. We're not running through airports to get to a plane. We're not even walking through a conference center to get to the meeting, nothing. It's like you get up, and if you're not careful, you're going to go right from your bed to your chair. Hopefully you get out of bed with your laptop, you know, and then, and so I've got a habit of every day, the same time I get up and I get dressed and I, you know, have my first call. I set it up as a regular scheduled thing so that I can recreate some semblance of normalcy in my life now. But, you know, if my hair isn't perfect, that's okay. If my makeup isn't perfect, that's okay too. If I'm not, you know, if it's not dressed or doesn't look perfectly, it's just being kinder and gentler with myself during this time, and other people as well, and joining in the joke. We're all in on this. We're all in this together. It's not like it's happening to someone else and I'm a witness, or it's happening to me and the rest of the world is witnessing. We're all in the same boat, and there's just a tremendous amount of freedom in that leeway of not being hard on myself. So COVID has been a very good growth opportunity for self-care and the way that I examine what it means to actually take care of myself. Yeah.
Mara, I know a website where you can get some nice vegetarian recipes.
All right, send it over. Oh my gosh.
Goop.com.
I know. I'm definitely going to be doing that. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, just building on what Mara said. I know, Teresa, yesterday we talked a little bit about the notion of wellness and what it means specifically to really high-performing women. And everybody who's a member of this group and who's listening to this call is a high-performing woman. And I think it's so interesting how most of us, I think, historically thought about how do we go all the time and just kind of do the necessary elements of wellness. And I think most of those, for most of us, were outward facing, as Mara was describing. So if you think about wellness, typically it might be, what's my exercise routine, making sure that I have my weekly nail appointment and my hair is cut and looks nice and I look professional and I look really polished and I look like I am that high performing version of myself. And what I have found to be really interesting during this time is the forced slowing down. The fact that you just can't do a lot of those external things. I guess we could for a few weeks, but now we can't again, at least here in LA. It really has caused, I think, many of us to look at the other elements of wellness that make up the whole being. And I know for myself, I'm very, very fortunate. I have a very sunny approach and sunny look on life all the time. And I'm so grateful for that. But, you know, even I during this time have found myself some days saying, what am I going to do to make sure that my state of mind is as positive as it needs to be today? And for me, I've found a new way of thinking about my own mental well-being, and being outside is critically important to me. I've learned that over these last few months. But I think just that forced slowing down, hopefully we aren't wasting the opportunity to really better understand what we do need from the inside out.
I find that I'm actually enjoying my new naked nude nails. I hadn't seen them in so many years, feeling like that was part of my sort of my armor for the world as a professional woman, to be as, kind of coiffed and put together. I love letting go of all of it, quite frankly. I think it's great. I've always had a fairly holistic vision of wellness, I think. And I love that you both said, Mara, you were talking about that you have a lot of joy in Virginia, that you've got a very sort of sunny disposition. I think we're all lucky because we know, in fact, that women suffer very high levels of depression and anxiety and various other issues. And so I think we're lucky in that respect. And I've always felt my wellness was very dependent, not just on my physical health, but, generally how my emotional health, sort of like, do I feel like a purpose in my life? So a lot of that has come back to really be reinforced by this, this experience of being in COVID, because the fact that I do live with my husband, and I think the dog factor is really big, because my dog is also sitting here, actually my son's dog, that I've somehow inherited during COVID, but has given tremendous joy to life. But what I've noticed is I feel I have a value on health that I don't know that I really appreciated before. My husband and I are both 60, so I'm aware that we're in the higher end of, the vulnerability factor. And I've really noticed that I'm appreciative. I'm appreciative of my health. I'm appreciative that I don't have diabetes. I'm appreciative that I am not a smoker. I'm appreciative of the fact that I've had good nutrition all my life. And I feel like I have a value. And I really feel for people who don't have that right now. The one thing I would say that makes me a little uncertain about this whole time is the sort of erratic nature of this virus. It's not like I went around someone who had measles and now I have measles. I don't know who has this unseen. For so many people, they have it silently. So I feel that there's this erratic nature to it that just makes me more grateful, for what I do have. So I think that I have a greater value on health and wellness, but I don't know that it's really changed. That I've always had a fairly holistic view of it.
Thank you. That's helpful. I think that's something else that will come out of this, is we'll be even more aware of holistic approaches, that it's really not, health and wellness isn't really just about, I go to the doctor once a year and get a checkup and that's it. It's really about health promotion and what that means for disease prevention. And, what we can be doing proactively to make sure that when you go to the doctor, everything looks great and, you're not then just trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem. So
Can I jump in on that? You said something that I really want. Going to the doctor and knowing the right things to ask a doctor, I feel that is one of the most important things for women. And not to plug my organization, but we do have 10 things every woman should talk to her doctor about on our website, the women'salzheimersmovement.org, because women are not aware that they should be having conversations starting 20 years old, 30 years old with their doctors about their cognition, their cognitive health, their hormones, all these things that women are just not taught to be asking a doctor. Maria always says, Maria Shriver, with whom I work, so I always give her credit for this, but her line is, if women cared about their brains half as much as they care about their eyes and thighs, we'd be in great shape. But the fact is, we don't go and take proactive care of our brains. And it's so important, essential. The payoff is so great down the road. And it's actually not difficult, but we don't know, we're not taught the questions that we should be asking our doctors starting really young. Because Alzheimer's starts to develop in your brain 20 to 30 years before you show the first symptoms. So you better get on board way beforehand and invest in your brain health.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm going to check that out because I do not know the questions to ask. I try to be proactive, and I'm sure that so many other of you participants are in the same boat. So thank you. And we should send that around, because that's very, very helpful advice and information. The numbers around Alzheimer's and just dementia are just astounding and increasing. And at this point, I mean, forgive me if my numbers aren't right, but it's my understanding that you have a greater chance of getting it than not getting it.
Yep.
So it's very real. It's very real. Thank you. Thank you so much. So with that, you know, I consider all of you women really trailblazers in the health and wellness industry. Is there anything that you're doing within your organizations to really promote health, promote wellness? Can you give us any examples or stories about that?
I'm happy to jump in on that one. We're really thoughtful around this topic, and we have been since March 13th, which is the day that is the marker in my mind for when I think we realized something's happening and we're going to have to work differently. I remember feeling like I made a very bold prediction to our CFO when we said we were going to have everyone work from home the following week. I remember saying, I think it'll be the end of the month before we're back. And, you know, I mean, we had no idea. None of us had ever been through anything like this, but just by virtue of the nature of the kind of company we are, I'm proud of the fact that we really quickly started saying, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that we're not just, you know, locked down into, you know, we need to preserve revenue mode. We need to be sure that we're really taking care of these people who are the heart and soul of the company. So we took a lot of the kinds of content that we have on our website and in our live seminars, and we started thinking about how we could sort of turn that inward to the specific needs of our team members. So we started hosting Wellness Wednesdays, which really touch all parts of wellness, whether it's emotional, nutritional, beauty and physical wellness, as well as financial wellness. And we tried to provide information around important topics like, you know, what can you do if your landlord wants to evict you because someone in your family maybe has lost a job? We really tried to provide a full sort of 360 of what we thought our team members might be going through. And I think in those early days, it helped just give everybody a common thing to be talking about instead of just being afraid or not knowing what might happen next. They had some common themes and common things to talk about. And then once we realized it was going to be going on longer, we did some more practical things like an ergonomics work from home training. We gave everyone a stipend to buy, whether it's an office chair or a laptop monitor, whatever it might be. But we're trying to be really thoughtful about the fact that we can't serve our audience well if we aren't first serving our internal team well. So there's no one right approach to it right now. I think we're all making it up as we go along, but just being thoughtful about it, I think, is the most important thing.
I love that. That makes so much sense. I personally try to take a walk every day. I know that's not very exciting, but you know, it's just so nice to get outside when you can go a whole day and never step foot outside. It just feels like such a treat. So it's, oh, my goodness, crazy times.
One of the things is we're considered an essential service. So that's a little bit of a twist. So the people that are working with us who are on the day-to-day front lines, having to go to the manufacturing facility and be there and deal with all the things of conducting business in person in manufacturing. Fortunately, we already had very rigorous SOPs in place because even though cannabinoid-based medicines, because of their scheduling, are not allowed to get certification as a GMP facility, we still manufacture as if we have a GMP facility, as we do in South Africa and in other places. So even though we're in Santa Rosa, California, we're still operating as if. But there have been, some very stressful situations for people. There's a lot of fear. Fortunately, they already had caps. I mean, they've been using PPEs since the beginning. It's just we had to put in additional layers of it so that, like, you know, how do you use the restrooms and all those sorts of things now, because it's not just keeping the manufacturing areas clean, it's also keeping the people safe from each other, because they go home at the end of the day and then they have spouses or roommates or whatever. So it's really been rigorous, trying, you know, to keep people, if they don't feel well at all, please don't come in. You will not be docked on your pay. We don't want you here, because you could take down everybody. And God forbid it affect anything of our product that goes out there and gets someone sick when we're supposed to be helping to heal them. I already mentioned, of course, the afternoon 3 to 4 session that we're doing for people. But I think in general, it's just being available to talk. I've gotten a lot more one-on-one text messages from people that normally, you know, I'm like, maybe you know, maybe they have other people that they talk to more in the company that want to reach out. And I've just let them all know that they're safe and secure, and that my job is to keep them as safe as possible so that they can do their work and stay safe. Because to have a company at the end of this with a destroyed staff and have our reputation be destroyed because of a recall or something, that's all it would take, is one mistake. And people are so trigger happy right now, going negative. I mean, I'm seeing, like, on social media and stuff, that it's like, whatever you're doing anyway, doing it right, do it 10 times more. Because the same way a woman has to be, you know, so much more on point than a male in the same job necessarily, I think right now, anybody that's putting anything out into the marketplace right now has to be even that much more responsible than they would ordinarily. That experience.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I thought maybe I'd get into some of the kind of individual questions as I've gotten to know you ladies and chat with you over the past few weeks. I've just heard such incredible stories that I found to be so memorable. So Sandy, when you were telling me, when we had talked one off, a little bit about Las Vegas and what you're doing there, I just thought it was so different, so transformative. Maybe you could share with us all kind of what's happening there and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, it's really an amazing story. I'm amazed that we've pulled this off. About 3 years ago, Maria Shriver had this vision that there's so much you can do to protect your brain, and so much you can do to sort of fortify it against aging. And she had this idea of starting a clinic, an Alzheimer's prevention clinic, of which there is one already at Weill Cornell in New York. And Dr. Richard Isaacson, who runs it, is one of my heroes, but really led the path down to this concept that we can invest in the health, our lifestyle interventions we can do young, through diet, through exercise, through meditation, things to calm our stress reduction, you know, all those things. They really pay off, and the data are in. It's not like a woo-woo thing. So Maria had this idea and went to Larry Ruvo, who owns who founded the Lou Ruvo Brain Health Center in Las Vegas. And she said, what if we started a women's Alzheimer's prevention clinic here? There isn't one in the entire country. Well, it's taken a long time to do, but on June 18th, we announced it, and Maria announced it on the Today Show. And the story I was telling you was the hunger for this kind of information is so intense. It's voracious. And Maria announced in the morning on the Today Show that we had opened the first Women's Alzheimer's Movement Prevention Center at the Lou Ruvo Clinic. And within 4 hours, the phone lines at the Brain Health Center were taken down. They broke because so many women called. They called from all 50 states. They called from 11 countries. We have the capacity. We are still doing this. I mean, we are doing this through donations. I mean, we are a philanthropy. We are having to raise money for this center. But the number of women in this world who are so desperate not to get to be, mentally and cognitively impaired down the road is so intense. And we should be, because we're going to all be little old ladies together. It took the phone lines down, and by the end of the day, there are only 380 possible patients we can see the first year with our financial model, unless people choose to donate more. And within, by the end of the day, we had something like 600 people, 440 of whom had completed a 1-hour questionnaire already. I mean, for us, this is just an indication. I mean, this was our first foray. We're hoping to open more. We will open more. It's just we have to do it methodically. But it's enough to take the phone lines down. It's enough to kind of break the bank. Day one, how many people, how many women are starving for information about all the positive things we can do to take care of our brains and hopefully prevent, if not, and prevent getting Alzheimer's.
Thank you, Sandy. And what I thought was so fascinating about that story is that the people, who use this program, you have to not already have something.
That's right. You're right. This is for women who are at risk for Alzheimer's. So maybe their mother or father has Alzheimer's, or a grandparent, or they have a lot of they've got the gene in the, they've done a genetics test. They know that they have the gene. The gene does not mean you're going to get Alzheimer's. So no worries if you've got it. But yes, they're at risk for getting Alzheimer's, but they cannot have the symptoms yet. So this is to stop you from getting Alzheimer's, and it's run by this wonderful Dr. Jessica Caldwell, the director there. And I mean, it's women, doctors treating women about a women's approach. I think I mentioned this to you yesterday. I'm just going to get it in, that we have a historic research gap on women in this country. And so it has led to this dramatic knowledge gap we have about women and women's brains. So this center is all focused on women, by women, for women. And apparently we women are anxious to get this kind of help.
Yeah, that's.
Can I ask you a question, Sandy? You mentioned genetic testing and genetic markers for Alzheimer's. I think a lot of us have probably done the 23andMe at this point. In your experience, how reliable are those kinds of reports? Because I can't remember, I think you pay for access to a certain level of reports. I don't remember exactly how it works, but you get this full listing of things that you are more likely or not more likely to have. How accurate is that sort of level of testing in your experience?
And I'm not a genetic counselor, so I want to jump in and say I'm not even a scientist. I would say that the genetic testing is very accurate for identifying whether you have the gene or not, but it all matters whether you have it in conjunction with another gene, and whether you have it in conjunction with other factors. You're a diabetic, or you have hypertension. You are African American. Women of color are twice as likely as white women to get Alzheimer's, as are Latinas 1.5 times. So, I mean, all of these factors, your ethnicity, your gender, the state of your health, all of those play in. I think that those tests are very accurate in identifying the fact that you may have it. But my favorite phrase from the world of prevention is genes are not your destiny. And that there is so much you can do to prevent getting sick despite your, the existence of that gene. So I would say for somebody who's had the test and is worried, I would go find immediately a good counselor to bring you down to earth, because there's no reason to freak out that you're going to get Alzheimer's because you got the APOE4 gene.
Thanks, Sandy. Yes, I think that's such a good message. It's so relevant. Virginia, one thing that we talked about a little bit, through our conversations that just was so funny to me and so memorable is I was asking about trends that you saw. Goop is, as we know, it's a lifestyle blog. There's lots of information on it. You can also buy lots of products that are Goop products, non-Goop products. And then now you have some of the brick and mortar stores. So it's really growing into quite the behemoth. How have you seen, from a business perspective, things change trend-wise during this pandemic?
I know the trend you're referring to, and I feel embarrassed following Sandy and her noble cause, which is so meaningful. But with that said, and we can all hopefully have a laugh together during these times. I think laughter has to be really, really high on the wellness scale in terms of things we need to keep doing together. But what I had talked with Teresa about when we were talking about trends during COVID, at Goop, our editors are really not afraid of any topic. We will write about anything that our readers ask questions about, and I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we're, as a privately owned company, we really, we create our own destiny. So I think it was in the second week of what I would call sort of official COVID. So maybe that last week of March, if I'm remembering correctly. And our editorial team decided that they wanted to include in our weekly newsletter some increased attention to the topic of sexual wellness and women's sexual concerns and questions that some readers had written in asking about. And in doing that, as they often do, the editorial team went off in several different directions, some more health-based and some more relationship-based and some just fun-based. And in that next week, we had a 300% increase in vibrator sales. And not a lot of people know that you can buy a vibrator on Goop, but I'm here to tell you, not just any vibrator. You can select from a beautiful assortment of very high quality, I'm joking, but we do look very seriously at the materials that are used and make sure that it's non-toxic and not harmful in any way. So that week-to-week jump, we thought, well, we have really hit a nerve here because we're in this period of quarantine, and we felt that just writing about the topic and writing about the topic of taking care of your sexual health being equally important to all the other aspects of your health, we felt like, it seems like that gave people permission to want to think about, whether it's by yourself or with a partner, people had permission to think about it and ultimately act on it. And I got this stat for you earlier this morning. So through the end of June, vibrator sales are up 40% over last year. And we are nearing $700,000 in vibrator sales in 6 months, which is, I think it's good to smile about it. But I think it's important. I think it's important for women to not be afraid to have conversations, whether it's with your best girlfriends or if you're seeking information from a resource, someone who's done some research. I think it's really important, getting back to that 360 holistic view, we can't forget any part of ourselves. So
it's funny. I just feel so empowered by listening to all of you, because all of the industries that you've gravitated towards within this space, I just see you as so brave, right? In a lot of ways, there's a lot of things that we don't like to talk about, whether it's using drugs, or Alzheimer's, or vibrators and wellness and those things. I think I just see a theme with all of you, that you're all so brave. So I just wanted to make that comment, because I'm inspired, and I hope that our listeners are inspired as well. And on the note of inspiration, Mara, when I listened to your TED Talk, I was absolutely inspired. And I think that maybe giving us a little bit of your story of how you came from this process engineer, as you had noted, to this cannabis guru. I think if you could share that with us, it would really mean a lot to our audience today.
Well, do you remember when vibrators used to be back massagers? They were all back massagers, right? That was what you would go to Brookstone or whatever, or you'd go to Fredericks of Hollywood. Those were your two options pretty much. But anyway, I loved that story. Both.
No one tell my mother that I was out in public talking about vibrators today. She teaches Sunday school. She would be mortified. Please, no one tell her.
I won't tell her. Let's see, let me get her on the call. No. So cannabis. All right. So when I had health issues, as I mentioned previously, that required, at one point I was on 26 different pharmaceuticals, including fentanyl patch and Neurontin or gabapentin and, a myriad of horrible caustic drugs. And what I was finding was that none of them were actually affecting or impacting the level of pain. They were fine at the acute level, but they weren't doing anything chronically to help me. All they were doing was interfering with my quality of life. When I would go to the doctor and I would say, these aren't working, whatever, they would add another drug. They would never subtract, they would just add. Now, as a side note, looking forward, now that I've got 10 years of a medical company, basically, I understand that most people are not particularly forthcoming with their physicians. And as a result, they feel like if they leave the doctor and the doctor hasn't written them a prescription, the doctor hasn't done anything for them. And that's part of our responsibility and our problem. And that's part of the education process that I'm working on with people. But back to my story. So I had been traveling quite a bit, and I met this young woman who she was a wake and baker. Every day she would get up and she would, smoke out of her little pink pipe and with the Hello Kitty on it. And I just judged her as a drug user. She was just somebody who used drugs. And when she came to visit me, I'd make her go in the garage and smoke because I didn't want to, have that nastiness in my house. I didn't want any neighbors, God forbid, to smell it or see it. And so I went out in the garage one day with her and I said, let me have a puff. I mean, it'd been the 70s was the last time I had tried it, and I was shocked by how my pain went from this really high level to a very low level, pretty much instantaneously. And after I was just really, shocked by this, I was furious that none of my doctors had ever mentioned this as a potential option for me. I had a home in Colorado and California, two places that it was legal, and nobody had mentioned it to me. And I'd had a doctor almost in tears because they couldn't help me. And now I think, yes, you could have. But that's on, so I took that mantle onto him. So once I decided to start investigating and learning more about this, I was looking for education because, that's the starting point on anything, and empowerment. And the only thing I could find was this event called HempCon. And it was down in LA at the Staples Center. And I think that's the Staples Center. And anyway, so I went to there and I was wearing a dress and I was very professional. And I get there and I mean, there's boom boxes with like the most annoying boom, 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 vibration. There's women in body paint with, well-placed leaves in strategic places, and it's like, I love vagina signs on the wall. And it's like, where am I? What am I doing? What does this have anything to do with the world I'm trying to learn about cannabis as a medicine? I want to learn about medicine. So I, immediately went to every stereotype in my brain and judgment about the people that I was seeing and meeting. They're this and I'm that. Very divisive in my thinking when I, look at it now. And it's like, I'm glad I've outgrown that stage of life and, gotten a litit bit more open. And, that's one of the gifts of age, is a little mellowing on I'm this and you're that. But I was speaking to this one young woman who asked if she could have her picture taken with me. God knows why, but she did. And she was wearing the body paint and the fig leaves or pot leaves. At least I should use the right plant, pot leaves. And I started asking her questions about, what brought you here? How did you get here? How did you end up in this space? And she started telling me about her Crohn's disease and how nothing worked for her. And she found cannabis, and it's changed her life. It saved her life. It completely transformed everything about her. And she was working in the cannabis space because she could use cannabis and go to work and not get in trouble. You know, as long as people still have to pee in a cup for an employer, that's going to be a problem for people using anything that isn't just an allopathic pharmaceutical. And it's just a problem. But it was such an eye opener to me as I started, after that conversation with her. Each person I interacted with, I had a different kind of viewpoint on it and asked better questions and listened to the answers better. And those, people that I supposedly, those so-called stoners, in my judgment, were human beings looking for solutions, whether it be to get rid of their social anxiety, or whether it's to get rid of the fact that, they're have OCD or PTSD. And so many people are walking around, especially in the younger generations. I'm over 60. And so I look at some of the younger generations, and there seems to be this almost like it's a, what I call CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, where people have been, one thing after another in their lives generationally, and all the fear in our societies that we live in, and all of that, it affects people and their health, obviously. I mean, from the smallest child on up. And if I can use this medicine to help people, if we can figure out a way to have them properly use the right formulation, the right dosage, not overuse, underuse, sideways. I mean, there's over 14,000 different varietals of what we're working with, so it's not easy. But it really did open my eyes to an area that first of all, I was going to be able to fulfill a unique position at that point in the industry, as far as credibility, science, research, all of that, at a time when my stereotype was pretty much what the general public's was as well. And also, it would open it up to the people of my generation that can benefit so much. I mean, I did a presentation a couple days ago, and one of the statistics that I looked up is over age 60, 80% of people are on 2 or more medications, and 70% are on 4 or more medications. Now you think about that, I bet a lot of those are things that could easily be replaced with plant medicines and lifestyle and training and meditation. And so if I can help to do that, then that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that story. I love that story because it just brings it it really brings it to life. And I think you're right. There is this stigma, like, I'm not a drug user, I'm a professional and whatnot. And I think people don't think of it as medicine, and it is medicine. It is natural. And there's a lot of benefits to that. And it's been around a long time.
And let's face it, I'm on Netflix giving medicine to an 8-month-old baby. I mean, so giving Schedule 1 drug. So talk about risk taking, Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. Well, we're getting a little closer to our time. So I thought maybe just to wrap it up, if each of you could give a little advice. A lot of the women on this call today, I'd say, are 20s, 30s, 40s, a little younger, still trying to figure it all out in terms of their health and wellness personally, and it's a process. What would be a little advice that you could each give to our listeners and viewers today?
Building off what I said about my Catholic Sunday school teaching mom, and don't tell her I'm talking about these things. On a serious note, I would just say, I think so many of us, whether it's because of a particular religious upbringing, or it's just conservative parents, or coming from maybe a smaller town, I think a lot of us are afraid to ask questions and afraid to talk about these topics that seem taboo for one reason or another. So whether it's marijuana or other plant-based medicines or therapeutics, or whether it's even a disease that, maybe a grandparent had Alzheimer's, but it just seemed really terrifying, and so you didn't really want to ask about it as you got older, whether it's sexual health, whether it's any of these things that make up the whole of us and make up a complete life. I think I know because I grew up in a small town with a very conservative Sunday school teaching family, it was later in life that I was comfortable having these questions answered, and even really talking about these topics with really trusted friends. It probably wasn't, honestly, until after law school that I really felt comfortable having conversations about things that we all have in common. And so I would just say, no, as women, we have all of these things in common. And if you're thinking about it and wondering about it and curious and want information, probably all your friends are as well. So I think that we can just do so much to support each other and learn from each other's experiences and just not be afraid. So
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I would add to that the importance of staying curious and engaged in the world. I mean, the fact that here's Mara now at this, age, her wise age, dabbling in the world of youthful cannabis, and, Virginia's dealing with young women or women, with something as extraordinarily not out there, but it's a real statement to say, I'm going to satisfy myself and I'm empowering myself to go buy something for myself and my pleasure. So I love that. But I think the importance of staying connected and curious about the world. I think the greatest gift my parents gave me was actually the fact that I grew up around the world. I didn't even really live in the US properly until I came to college. And I'm very grateful because I learned there was no one way to see, no one language, no one way, no one religion. There are many ways to, and I don't want to say skin a cat, it sounds so gruesome, but there's so many different ways to approach everything in life. And I shared with Teresa that I have decided to go back to school, to go to graduate school. And I just decided to do that because I felt not just that older people have something to share, but really younger people have something to share, and I want a piece of it. So I wanted to be out in the world with young people again, about talking about ideas that I'm not necessarily talking about every day in my job, etc. So I'm actually very upset about COVID, because my plans to go on campus have all been negated by the pandemic. So I'm going to be doing online for an awful lot of it, and I'm bummed about that. But I really think the desire and ability to stay curious and engaged with different generations and the people around you doing different things and people who don't look like you is a really important thing to do to stay happy and healthy and connected.
Thank you so much. Mara, is there anything you want to add that we can sort of close with?
Well, I just think that people need to follow their joy and follow their bliss in what they do. And I don't believe in a duality. I call it duality of morality. And that's the people that they have their values that they have in their home and their family and their community and their friends. And then they have their business way of being in the world. I believe those two need to be the same, and it just needs to be one. You are who you are and how you interact with the world, because, and this is a good time to be, asking for help when you need it. And that's perfectly acceptable, because chances are if you need help with something somebody else needs, like Virginia said earlier about, it's like, just reach out and be open and be willing to ask for help. And that shows more strength. You know, one of the things that my father taught me very early was that it takes more courage to quit something that's not right for you than to stay, you know. And that's not, I mean, for my generation, that was certainly not the way we looked at the workforce. You know, it was the 30-year gold watch was the ideal. And fortunately, that's been ripped up and thrown away, and people can do but don't be afraid of making changes now also to follow that, because yes, we have high unemployment, we have all these other things, but in every sector, there are opportunities to be creative and find something that somebody else, maybe it's not being done well, and maybe it's your chance to be the one to do it. But it's really about what makes you happy. And then once you figure that out, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just do what you're doing and be in the role and be in the lane you're in. And that's really, I feel like the most important thing is to just not be distracted by shiny objects in a time when there's so many opportunities that are, you know, all virtual, and you think you can grab. It's like webinars. I mean, how many webinars a day can you attend and actually still produce anything, right? So that's really all I want to add on this. And I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Teresa, Sandy.
Thank you all. Oh my goodness. This has been, I feel so inspired. I think that, you know, as women, especially, you know, professional women, you often feel like you need to be in a box and you need to be perfect. You need to follow the rules, and you can't push the envelope. And I think I see 3 women today who have pushed the envelope in every way, shape, or form, and who have trailblazed for the rest of us. So thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom. I think just also just gives us such a nice break to put things in perspective when we're sitting in the monotony of our, you know, our work from home life. That I think getting exposure to you women has just been absolutely phenomenal, and I can't thank you enough. And thank you all who attended and took time out of your day to hear us. I really, really appreciate it. So
Thanks so much.
with that, I guess have a wonderful week and rest of the day.
Thank
you.
Thank you
so much.
Bye.
Bye.